Hey everyone, this is Kit with Chicago Reacts. Welcome to our channel. We have seen the comment section where people are saying, hey, you need to react to more Napoleon videos. There's some videos that you missed. And the thing is, we saw those comments. Now the other reactors are going to be reacting to World War I videos, but I will be reacting to these other videos that all of you have recommended to us to check out. I haven't seen these videos, but I am familiar with Napoleon Bonaparte, and I'm more than happy to go on this journey to learn more about Napoleon Bonaparte, the wars that he's been fighting in, the people he surrounded himself with. So this all seems like a lot of fun. All of this is new to me. Let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the videos. Spain, 1809. This war was my downfall. So there's a good chance that, yeah, again, I've reacted to a lot of the video. I mean, saw a lot of the videos that were that the previous reactors were looking at, and the one thing that I was surprised by was how Spain was his downfall, how it was quoted in one of the videos that our fellow team members reacted to. So, Spain, Napoleon's Vietnam.
In 1809, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, was at the height of his power. He had just won another crushing victory against Austria at Wagram and imposed a humiliating peace treaty. But the war he'd started in Spain and Portugal, with his ill-judged invasion the previous year, continued to rage. Napoleon had placed his own brother Joseph on the Spanish throne, uniting a proud country against him. His troops had dealt ruthlessly with popular uprisings, while routing a succession of Spanish armies. In February 1809, Marshal Lannes overcame the heroic defense of Zaragoza in a brutal siege that cost 54,000 Spanish lives and
Beyond barbaric, 54,000 people. You know, and the thing is, like, we see this in the history books, but we don't really take into account just, again, how bloody it was back then, and all the violence and the true horror of war and how it was an everyday thing. It's just, but the thing is, nothing has really changed that much even now, but my goodness, what a nightmare.
10,000 French. But still, the Spanish and Portuguese remained defiant. And 3 months after their escape from Coruña, the British were back. In April, Sir Arthur Wellesley landed in Lisbon to lead a small Anglo-Portuguese army. British redcoats would fight alongside Portuguese troops, who, with the help of British training, would soon prove themselves highly effective. 3 weeks after arriving in Portugal, Wellesley moved against Marshal Soult's Second Corps, which had recently taken Porto. Soult and his troops, preoccupied with plundering the region, had no warning of the British advance, and were soon in headlong retreat, back through the mountains into Spain.
Spain is a country where small armies are defeated and large armies starve. Henry IV of France.
Having secured Portugal for the time being, Wellesley planned a joint campaign with General Cuesta, commanding the Spanish army of Extremadura. On the 10th of July, the two commanders met at Casas de Miravete to discuss strategy. Relations between these two allies were not straightforward. Spain and Britain had a long history of conflict. The Spanish were deeply suspicious of British intentions in Spain, while the British had a low opinion of the Spanish army, which they considered poorly trained and badly led. Wellesley's request to take over command of Spanish forces was rejected, but the generals agreed to a joint advance up the Tagus Valley towards Madrid, to be supported by General Venegas, advancing from La Mancha. In the face of their advance, Marshal Victor's First Corps withdrew to Talavera, where he was joined by King Joseph and General Sebastiani's Fourth Corps. The French plan was for Joseph's army to defend Madrid, while Marshal Soult led 3 corps down from the north, to get behind and trap the Anglo-Spanish forces.
That's just incredible right there, and a clever move on the French part.
But Joseph, worried by Soult's slow progress and General Venegas's advance on Madrid, decided to attack at Talavera. This video is brought to you by our sponsor, Curiosity Stream,
Curiosity!
home of more than 2,500 documentaries exploring themes such as science, technology, and the natural world, with exclusive content from the likes of Professor Stephen Hawking and Sir David Attenborough. And if you've already watched all our videos, they've got bags of history. This is the place to go for high-end, hour-long docs on Rome, the Middle Ages, the World Wars, space race, and much more. We've been enjoying Waterloo Hidden Traces, a great one-hour documentary that uses the latest battlefield archaeology to gain fresh insights into Napoleon's last battle. Curiosity Stream is available worldwide, and an online subscription starts from just $2.99 a month. Use the promo code EPICHISTORYTV at sign up and you'll get your first 30 days free. Thanks to Curiosity Stream for sponsoring this video.
So what are you waiting for? Get your learn on. Go to Curiosity Stream, okay? Come on, let's get smart. Go to Curiosity Stream. There, see? We here at Chicago Reacts love science and knowledge. Let's see. 30,000 British troops, some 150 leagues from the sea, against 100,000 of the best troops in the world. My God! Napoleon.
The Battle of Talavera saw British infantry bear the brunt of the French assault. They stood firm and repelled the enemy with disciplined musket fire and bayonet charges.
Wow.
Talavera was a small battle compared to the great clashes fought that year in Austria. But it proved that under Wellesley, Britain's small, well-drilled army was a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, for those of you who cannot see, casualty estimates. British, 5,363 souls. Spanish, 1,201 souls. And the French, 7,268 souls. Oh my goodness, that is glorious combat for the Emperor, I guess.
Though in the short term, victory achieved little. Warned of Soult's approach from captured dispatches, the victorious Anglo-Spanish army retreated, while King Joseph and Fourth Corps marched against Venegas's army, which they smashed at the Battle of Almonacid. That autumn, the Supreme Junta in Sevilla, Free Spain's effective government, raised two new armies for another attempt to liberate Madrid, planning to converge on the capital from north and south. But Wellesley, ennobled as Viscount Wellington for his victory at Talavera, had been so disgusted by the lack of Spanish cooperation that summer that he refused to risk his army. Predictably, Spain's inexperienced armies met with disaster.
Guys, if you're not experienced, don't do it. I mean, these are experienced soldiers. Don't do it.
At Ocaña, they suffered their biggest defeat of the war, when a smaller force under Marshal Soult routed the Spanish army, taking 14,000 prisoners and 50 cannon. A week later, the army of the left was heavily defeated at Alba de Tormes. There was more bad news when Girona fell to the French after an epic 7-month siege. The Supreme Junta's plans to retake Madrid were in tatters, and southern Spain was now wide open to French attack.
1810. My object is not to obtain submission by force, but to dispel illusions. I will arrive at a union of hearts. Oh, okay. Joseph Bonaparte.
In January 1810, King Joseph marched south with an army of 60,000 men. Spanish resistance evaporated. Spain's supreme junta was overthrown in a coup as Córdoba and Seville fell without a fight. Joseph, who still hoped to win over the Spanish with his progressive reforms, was welcomed by many as a savior from anarchy. Only Cadiz held out, its defenses reinforced by a British naval squadron, and was besieged by Victor's First Corps. Meanwhile, Napoleon sent Marshal Massena to Spain with 65,000 reinforcements. He was reckoned one of Napoleon's best marshals, and had just been made Prince of Essling for his heroics in the recent war against Austria. Massena was to lead a third French invasion of Portugal, take Lisbon, and chase the British back into the sea. He laid siege to Ciudad Rodrigo, a fortified city controlling one of the main routes into Portugal, which surrendered after 2 weeks' bombardment.
My goodness.
Wellington, with only 33,000 men to face Massena's 50,000, retreated.
Oh, come on, Iron Duke. Get back in there and fight.
Massena crossed the Portuguese frontier and besieged Almeida. After just 13 hours of bombardment, a lucky French shot hit the Portuguese magazine. 70 tons of gunpowder went up in a devastating explosion that made all further resistance useless. It was a serious blow to Wellington, who'd been relying on Almeida's strong defenses to buy him time. At Busaco, he found a strong defensive position and made a stand. Massena's uphill frontal attack failed, at a cost of 4,000 casualties.
Okay, so basically, I want to say a quote from the movie Waterloo, where the actor playing Napoleon says, "This Wellington, he fights sitting on his ass." That's because, like, again, like uphill battle at Waterloo, that's how Wellington was able to really defeat Napoleon. But even here, using the high ground to be the absolute devil in Spain.
But the next day, the French found a way to outflank Wellington's position, and his retreat continued.
Gotta find another spot. Gotta find another place to fight sitting on your ass, which is great. If you know how to fight sitting on your ass, type in the comment section below.
Massena's army neared Lisbon. His scouts reported something completely unexpected. Stretching across the Lisbon Peninsula, protecting the city from attack, they found a new chain of fortifications in 2 major lines. Known as the Lines of Torres Vedras, the British and Portuguese had been constructing these defenses for more than a year. Now the lines bristled with more than 100 forts, redoubts, and batteries, manned by 30,000 troops and 250 guns. Massena soon discovered the lines were far too strong for him to attack. What's more, a scorched earth strategy had stripped the surrounding countryside of anything that might help the French. While Portuguese partisans attacked French supply columns as they struggled through the mountains to reach Massena's army.
Wow.
Massena faced a grim predicament. Starved of supplies, too weak to attack, unwilling to retreat. But throughout this standoff, it was Portuguese peasants who suffered most of all. When their villages and farms were burned, many took refuge in Lisbon, where thousands died of starvation and disease.
Oh my God. Wow. So, Prince of Essling, you are no longer Massena. Oh, wow. Okay, that's Napoleon II Marshal Massena. There you go.
Back in France, Napoleon had been preoccupied with his divorce from the Empress Josephine.
I mean, come on. Trying to conquer the world here. He doesn't have time to do this divorce stuff. I mean, what's going on here? See, this is why, again, couples, you need to talk. You need to sit down, have a conversation. You know, I mean, hey, I'm trying to conquer the world here. I mean, can you imagine Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great going through a divorce? Probably not.
and then a new marriage to Archduchess Marie-Louise,
Oh,
daughter of the Emperor of Austria.
that's right, because in the earlier videos, the reactors reacted to the fact that Napoleon, when he defeated Austria, or the Austrian Empire, he was asking for the hand in marriage to one of the royal families there.
She was now expecting their first child. Nevertheless, from Paris, Napoleon sent frequent orders to his marshals in Spain and Portugal, urging them to take more aggressive action. But when these orders arrived weeks later, they were usually out of date and showed little understanding of the problems his marshals faced. He now ordered Soult, based in Andalusia, to go on the offensive to draw enemy forces away from Lisbon, so Massena could take the city. Soult laid siege to Badajoz, a fortified city that controlled the southern route into Portugal. When 12,000 men of the army of Extremadura marched to its relief, they were routed by Soult, after which the city tamely surrendered, giving up 8,000 prisoners and vast quantities of stores. It was another heavy blow to Spain's armed forces. But remarkably, despite such disasters and their many blundering generals, the Spanish troops remained willing to fight, the courage of the rank and file undimmed.
So, that's dedication right there. And, it's hard to imagine really, like, again, with that kind of weaponry and even earlier with the messages that Napoleon was sending out to his marshals. Again, in this day and age, we're so used to instant message, instant phone calls, text messages, all that kind of stuff. And we're able to know what's happening, to the best of our ability, like right away. But back in those days, it just, finding out what is really happening. Information was key, but also stuff could be out of date. Like anything can be happening within a minute. Things change like that. But then also at the same time too, seeing like all these soldiers, fight, standing and, firing the musket fire, and they're also in the line of fire. It's just, takes a lot of courage to do that. And I don't know if I could do that, because that's a whole other ball game. Plus you got cannon fire, it's just, yeah.
Victor's First Corps, besieging Cadiz, had now been so weakened to support other operations that the Anglo-Spanish garrison decided to attack. The Allies landed along the coast to strike at the French siege lines from the rear. But they were ambushed by the French at Barossa. Despite heavy losses, the Anglo-Portuguese rearguard fought off the enemy, but a furious falling out between British commander Sir Thomas Graham and his Spanish counterpart General La Peña threw away any advantage.
Guys, stop being petty. You don't have time to be petty.
Soult, alarmed at these developments, marched back to Andalusia. Meanwhile, Massena, out of food and with no prospect of reinforcement, had no option but to retreat. Wellington's army pursued, discovering evidence of several appalling atrocities committed by the French against Portuguese villagers. There were running battles with the French rearguard, brilliantly commanded by Marshal Ney.
Do you not know who he is? That is Marshal Ney! Sorry, again, from the ending scene of Waterloo, spoiler alert, there was Marshal Ney trying to rally the old guard as they were retreating. Do you not know who I am? I am Marshal Ney!
Until he was sacked by Massena for criticizing his leadership.
Oh, Marshal, come on, tell him who you are.
Having chased the French out of Portugal, Wellington besieged Almeida. Massena's army, now rested and reinforced, marched to its aid. The two armies clashed again at Fuentes de Oñoro. In 2 days of heavy fighting, Massena failed to break through Wellington's position to relieve Almeida. The fortress fell the next week, but to Wellington's fury, British bungling allowed most of the French garrison to escape. Massena had lost 25,000 men in Portugal. Now he'd lost Almeida too, and a string of bad decisions, not least to bring his mistress with him on campaign, had
Dude, why'd you bring your mistress? Come on. You gotta stay focused. You can't have your ladies distract you while while we're out there, planning for war, man. Just don't do it. What's wrong with you? I had more high expectations for you, Marshal.
cost him the respect of his officers.
Yeah,
the Marshal, whom Napoleon had once nicknamed the Dear Child of Victory, was recalled to France in disgrace, never to hold senior command again. Napoleon sent Marshal Marmont to replace him. Meanwhile, Marshal Beresford, the British commander of Portugal's army, was sent to retake Badajoz with 20,000 British and Portuguese troops. When Soult approached with a relief force, Beresford marched to meet him at Albuera. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, around 6,000 casualties on each side, with more than a third of the British infantry killed, wounded or captured. Marshal Soult declared,
"There is no beating these troops, in spite of their generals. I always thought they were bad soldiers. Now I'm sure of it. I had turned their right, pierced their center, and everywhere victory was mine. But they didn't know how to run."
Soult had been checked, but he was determined to save Badajoz. The newly arrived Marshal Marmont marched to his aid, and they advanced again. This combined army forced the British to abandon the siege. But when Wellington withdrew to a strong defensive position across the Portuguese border, Soult and Marmont did not pursue. French commanders in Spain had learned grudging respect for Wellington and for the steadiness of his troops.
Yeah, because he fights sitting on his ass. Remember that. That's always best. When in doubt, fight sitting on your ass. There you go.
For now, the war in Spain had entered stalemate.
Oh. Spain. General's fortune, officer's ruin, soldier's death. French barracks graffiti. Even then, man, they have graffiti back in the barracks. Because I served in the Marine Corps, so, you see graffiti all over the place.
While British, French, and Spanish armies crisscrossed Spain and Portugal, another war was fought every day in the mountains, hills, and woods. From 1808, Spanish and Portuguese civilians, militias, and ex-soldiers began taking up arms against the hated French invader. They waged a war of ambushes and hit-and-run raids, known in Spanish as La Guerrilla, the Little War. Its fighters became known in English as guerrillas. Britain's Royal Navy supplied vital weapons, stores, and money, often landing them behind enemy lines. Much of Spain's rugged countryside fell under the control of the guerrillas. North of Madrid, Juan Martín Díez, an ex-soldier known as El Empecinado, the Stubborn, led a guerrilla band 6,000 strong. In Navarre, Esposimina, a former peasant, ran a highly organized band that caused havoc for the French, capturing convoys and couriers on the strategic Burgos-Bayonne road.
And see, these are just regular people or former soldiers, peasants, farmers. I mean, they're fighting for their country. And on the other hand, too, look, Napoleon's army, they're 100,000 strong, 200,000 strong, occupying Spain. In a toe-to-toe slug match, you're not going to beat that. But if you're clever and use hit-and-run tactics and ambushes, you could cause devastation, assassinations towards their generals and officers. Sometimes, look, you can't fight honorably all the time in glorious melee combat. Sometimes you got to fight a little dirty and use a little espionage and, hit-and-run tactics. So that's incredible. Again, this guy, Francisco Mina, guerrilla leader, started off as a farmer.
And branding Viva Mina on the forehead of collaborators. While in the West, Julian Sanchez, known as El Charro, led the self-styled Lanceros de Castilla. El Charro himself wore a French hussar's cap, its eagle symbolically turned upside down. There were dozens.
You know what? I'd like to know a little bit more about that guy, El Charro, because like I hope that there was never an accident where someone's like, "Oh, look, there's a French soldier," and they probably got shot at or something like that. Because it's like, no, the eagle's upside down, jackass.
More bands operating across Spain, though a few were no better than bandits, terrorizing civilians as often as the enemy.
Ugh.
The guerrilla war was merciless, marked by hideous atrocities on both sides.
Oh.
A French soldier's greatest fear was to be taken alive by the guerrillas, who often tortured their prisoners before killing them.
Oh boy.
Tens of thousands of French troops were tied down by this people's war, guarding outposts or patrolling the countryside. The roads were so dangerous for French messengers that they required cavalry escorts of 200 men or more. Many still didn't get through, their valuable dispatches forwarded to Wellington, for whom they became an invaluable source of intelligence.
Again, one messenger, 200 cavalry protecting him, and then even that wasn't enough. After maybe it's just me because I played a lot of Medieval 2, Total War, and some of the other Total War series. Just seeing that, like, you got to get out of there. There's no hope. I mean, the battle's already lost.
The war in Spain would ultimately cost the lives of 240,000 French soldiers.
You got to go.
As was typical in wars of this era, most died from disease, but more died fighting guerrillas than in battle against the British and Spanish armies.
Wow.
However, it was the twin threat, a well-led regular army under Wellington and a popular insurgency, that left the French facing an impossible strategic dilemma.
You got to get out.
If their armies remained dispersed to fight the guerrillas, Wellington could attack.
You got to go.
But if they concentrated to defeat Wellington in battle, huge swathes of the country would quickly fall to the guerrillas. This was Napoleon's Vietnam, or his bleeding ulcer, as he called it. A war that cost his empire an average of 100 casualties every day.
You got to leave. You got to leave, buddy. It ain't going to work.
With little prospect of victory. And in 1812, as Napoleon launched his gigantic invasion of Russia, Wellington and the guerrillas launched their own offensive that would turn the war in Spain on its head. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters who make this channel possible.
Okay, wow, there's a lot to take away from that. First of all, after seeing the casualties, maybe this is... again, Napoleon, he's on this quest for, trying to conquer Europe, defeat the French. I mean, not the French. I screwed that up. He led the French to disaster, but, trying to defeat the British, the Russians, and has this insurgency happening in Spain. After a while, you got to realize, hey, we got to close up shop. I mean, the invasion in the first place, especially seeing the original reactors react to it, it was a disaster, and it should not have happened in the first place. It wasn't tactically sound. It wasn't financially viable. I guess in Napoleon's case, he really wanted to do his whole continental Europe and blockade trade against Britain. But at the end of the day, that's just not going to happen. And let's face it, no matter what Napoleon did, he was creating more problems for himself. And from what I have read, from what I even saw when our reactors were reacting to this fantastic series, it's just Spain should not have happened. The war in Spain should not have happened. He should have left right away and should never engage in it in the first place. But, when you're an emperor, when you are trying to conquer the world, case in point, you're trying to conquer everything. And that doesn't usually play out well for said would-be conquerors. I mean, yes, there have been individuals that have been lucky in the past, but Napoleon, your luck ran out in Spain. So I think we learned a lot, and we're going to be reacting to more videos as well. Check it out. And again, fantastic series. Bye-bye.